Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're looking at this idea of the high-value woman.
Okay.
It's been making the rounds online, and a lot of you sent in this YouTube video by Tam Kaur.
Mm-hmm.
It's called How to Really Be a High-Value Woman, High-Value Traits, What to Avoid, and Femininity Tips.
Yeah.
Even the title had me intrigued.
Yeah.
Kaur really frames it as a whole philosophy for self-improvement, not just like dating advice, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
But then she kicks it off by comparing a high-value woman to a luxury handbag.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, we have to unpack this.
I mean, that comparison is so interesting. It makes you think about what we associate with luxury,
Yeah.
exclusivity, quality, desirability.
For sure.
Kaur seems to be going for that same vibe, suggesting that there are certain qualities that make a woman stand out.
Right. Definitely a bold statement. So, okay, let's get into what she actually means by high value.
Yeah.
She defines it as being self-sufficient, totally committed to self-improvement.
Okay.
And get this, radiating a higher vibrational frequency.
Okay, the vibrational frequency thing can sound a little woo-woo.
Right.
But if we look past that, what she's talking about is having a positive and empowered mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions all working together to create a life that feels good.
I love how you put that. And she even has this vibrational frequency chart
Oh, really?
where she breaks down all these different emotional states from like low vibe jealousy to high vibe joy and gratitude.
Interesting. It reminds me of those energy healing practices that are becoming more popular.
Right.
I mean, the scientific evidence for that stuff is still kind of shaky,
Yeah.
but a lot of people find it helpful for shifting their mindset.
Totally.
And even if you don't buy into the energy stuff, Kaur's focus on positive emotions does line up with a lot of what we know about well-being.
It does, for sure.
Yeah.
So it seems like she's emphasizing inner work and personal growth more than just outward achievements.
Yeah, exactly. She's not saying you have to be rich or famous to be high value. It's about building certain qualities and habits that lead to a more fulfilling life.
I like that. So that brings us to the 5 traits she specifically links with a high-value woman.
Okay.
And she uses some pretty eye-catching examples.
I'm ready. Let's hear them.
I'm excited to break them down with you and see how they hold up.
Yeah, let's see what they reveal about her whole philosophy.
Okay, so first up is exclusivity. Remember that luxury handbag analogy?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Kaur says a high-value woman is picky with her time and energy.
Uh-huh.
Just like a Birkin bag isn't for just anyone.
This makes me think about boundaries, which are a big part of a lot of self-help advice these days.
Right.
It's all about being intentional with who you let into your life, protecting your energy, focusing on what truly matters.
Mm-hmm. So instead of trying to please everyone,
Mm-hmm.
you're choosing to invest in the people and activities that align with your values.
Exactly. And that can be super empowering.
Yeah.
It lets you create a life that feels more authentic.
I can see that. Okay, what's the next trait on her list?
All right, trait number 2 is kindness and compassion.
Okay.
Kaur believes a high-value woman is mature, avoids drama, and steers clear of what she calls low-vibe behavior. She even brings up the Hailey Bieber-Selena Gomez situation
Oh, wow.
as an example of what not to do.
Okay, using a celebrity example is definitely one way to get your point across.
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder if there's some judgment there.
Right?
I mean, is it really fair to call certain behaviors low value?
That's a good point. I think it's important to have empathy and try to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes those mistakes play out in public.
For sure. So maybe it's less about judging specific actions and more about having an attitude of kindness
Yeah.
toward ourselves and others?
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we're all on our own journey and we all mess up sometimes.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Okay, now this third trait is interesting. Kaur calls it the self-development addiction.
Self-development addiction. Huh.
She thinks constantly striving to improve yourself is key. Which she even calls detachment from everything except your own growth the secret formula for a fulfilling life.
Detachment is one of those words that can mean a lot of different things.
Okay.
Kaur seems to be using it in the sense of not letting external factors control your worth or happiness.
Mm-hmm.
It's about focusing on your own journey no matter what's happening around you.
It sounds really empowering, but also kind of scary.
Yeah.
Is it even possible to detach from everything except ourselves? What about our relationships with the people we love?
That's a really good question and one we're going to need to explore more.
For sure.
Kaur does talk about the importance of relationships, but she has a very particular view on them, especially when it comes to dating.
Right. Which brings us to her next trait, femininity.
All right, this is where things could get interesting.
I've heard some people say that Kaur's views on femininity are a little traditional.
Well, she definitely emphasizes balancing independence with allowing yourself to receive.
Okay.
She even uses her own relationship as an example.
Oh, really?
Saying her boyfriend takes care of her financially and emotionally, even though she could handle those things herself.
There's definitely a perspective that won't resonate with everyone. It brings up questions about power dynamics and gender roles.
Yeah, it
But I am curious to hear how she balances this with her emphasis on self-sufficiency and detachment.
We'll definitely unpack that more. But before we get too into the relationship stuff, let's finish up with her fifth and final trait.
Okay.
Self-worth, care, and love.
Got it. She seems to be advocating for a holistic approach to well-being.
Yes, not just focusing on external achievement.
Right.
Yeah.
She talks about taking care of your physical, emotional, and spiritual needs.
It reminds me of the whole self-care movement.
It totally does.
It's about knowing that you're worthy just as you are, and that your worth doesn't depend on what other people think.
I love that. So it's about cultivating self-love,
Yeah,
and then from that place, you can show up as your best self.
exactly. That's a great summary. But as with any self-improvement philosophy, there's always more to uncover.
This is already so fascinating. I can't wait to dig deeper into Kaur's ideas, especially about those low-value behaviors. So we talked about the 5 traits Kaur links to a high-value woman. Now I want to get into those low-value behaviors she brings up.
Okay.
She lists things like obsessing over someone who's wronged you, seeking constant validation from others, getting caught up in drama. I mean, these are all things that I think a lot of us have probably struggled with at some point.
Totally. And I think it's important to recognize that these behaviors often come from a place of unmet needs.
Yeah.
Like someone who's always seeking validation might be dealing with insecurity
Right.
or a lack of self-love.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So instead of saying these behaviors are inherently low value, maybe it's more helpful to see them as signs that something deeper is going on.
I agree. And that's where Kaur's advice on healing from these behaviors comes in. She gives some practical tips like journaling your anger instead of venting online.
Oh, yeah.
Which can be a really healthy outlet for processing emotions without spreading negativity.
She even calls those comment section arguments low vibe
Yeah.
and a total waste of energy, which, let's be honest, they usually are.
True.
I've definitely gotten sucked into those online battles before.
It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle of reacting, especially online where everyone has a voice.
Yeah.
But Kaur's point is that getting into those conflicts just drains us,
Right.
and it doesn't really make us feel any better.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's about choosing to focus our energy on something more positive and productive.
Exactly.
Which brings us to another behavior. Kaur talks about jealousy.
Okay.
She thinks it comes from a lack mindset, and she encourages developing an abundance mentality instead.
This is interesting, and it ties back to her focus on self-worth and detachment. Instead of comparing ourselves to others and feeling envious,
Right.
Kaur suggests we focus on what we're grateful for and believe that there's enough for everyone.
It's about shifting from scarcity to abundance.
Yes, and that can be a really powerful shift.
It can, not just in romantic relationships, but in all parts of life.
For sure. When we believe there's enough to go around, we're less likely to feel threatened by other people's success.
Yeah.
We can celebrate their wins without feeling bad about ourselves.
I like that. Now, speaking of romantic relationships,
Uh-huh.
Kaur has some pretty strong opinions about how a high-value woman should act.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that whole prize to be earned thing?
Right. That's definitely one of her more controversial points.
It is. She's emphasizing knowing your worth and not settling for less. She even says a high-value woman doesn't chase after men or need their validation.
Okay.
She focuses on building a great life for herself and only gets into relationships with men who are willing to meet her standards and fully commit.
I see. The intention behind that is empowering, encouraging women to value themselves. But it could also be misinterpreted.
It could.
It's important to remember that relationships are a two-way street,
For sure.
built on mutual respect and shared values.
So it's not about seeing yourself as a prize,
Right.
but rather as a whole and valuable person entering a partnership with another whole and valuable person.
Exactly. And that partnership should be based on genuine connection,
Yeah.
open communication, and wanting to support each other's growth.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But Kaur also stresses this idea of detachment in relationships, which seems kind of contradictory to what we're talking about here.
You're right. That is a bit of a tension between her focus on independence and her acknowledgement that connection is important.
Maybe it's about finding a balance,
Yeah.
a way to be both independent and interdependent.
That's a really insightful way to look at it. Maybe true detachment in relationships isn't about pushing people away or being emotionally closed off.
Right.
It's more about not basing our self-worth on what other people do or think.
So it's about having a strong sense of self and knowing our happiness comes from within, but still being open to love and connection.
Exactly. It's about being secure enough in ourselves to let others be themselves without needing them to fulfill all our needs or play a specific role.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly contradictory ideas might actually work together. But there's still one piece I'm struggling with. This whole high-value lifestyle that Kaur promotes.
Ah, yes. The aspirational but potentially overwhelming world of early mornings,
Exactly.
green smoothies, and constant self-improvement.
She paints a picture of a woman who prioritizes self-care, pursues her passions, cultivates healthy relationships, and has a super positive attitude towards her work. It all sounds great in theory, but is it actually realistic for most people?
That's a really good question. And it's important to acknowledge that everyone's life is different.
Yeah.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Right. So it's not about copying Kaur's exact routine,
No.
but taking inspiration from her approach and making it our own.
Exactly. The key is to be mindful of how we're spending our time and energy. Are we doing things that align with our values and make us happy?
Okay.
Are we taking care of our physical, emotional, and mental well-being?
Good questions.
Are we surrounding ourselves with people who support and uplift us?
Those are all important things to think about. It seems like Kaur's vision of the high-value lifestyle isn't really about checking off boxes.
Yeah.
It's more about creating a life that feels authentic and meaningful.
You got it. It's about aligning our actions with our values, building healthy habits, and putting our well-being first.
And she also talks about the importance of having the right people around you.
Yeah.
She even says that sometimes we need to let go of friendships that no longer serve us.
This goes back to the idea of boundaries and being intentional with our relationships.
Right.
As we change and grow, some friendships naturally fade, while others become stronger.
And when it comes to making new connections, Kaur emphasizes authenticity, mutual respect, and shared values. She thinks a high-value woman shows up for her friends with genuine kindness and support,
Okay.
without jealousy or judgment.
It's a good reminder that healthy relationships go both ways, and that true connection comes from being ourselves and appreciating others for who they are.
All of this is giving me a more nuanced understanding of Kaur's high-value philosophy.
Yeah.
But I still have one big question. How do we balance this focus on self-sufficiency and detachment with the very human need for connection?
That's a fantastic question, and I think it gets to the core of what it means to be high value.
Yeah.
Whether we're using Kaur's terms or any other framework.
So where do we go from here? How do we bring all these seemingly opposite ideas together into a way of life that makes sense?
Well, I think that's where the real journey begins. It's about taking what resonates with us from Kaur's ideas and leaving behind what doesn't. Then we can keep exploring these questions in our own lives.
Okay, so we've been really digging into Tam Kaur's concept of the high-value woman. And I gotta say, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
A mix of really solid advice and then some stuff that makes you go, wait, what?
It definitely pushes some buttons when it comes to self-improvement and relationships.
For sure.
Yeah.
But the question that keeps coming back to me is this. Can we really embrace this whole self-sufficiency thing, detaching from everything except our own growth, while also having those deep, meaningful connections with others?
That's the big question, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it feels like a contradiction.
It's the paradox at the heart of her philosophy.
Yeah.
And maybe at the heart of being human, we want to be independent, but also belong.
Exactly. We crave freedom, but we also need intimacy.
Right.
And Kaur does say that relationships are important. She even says, being a high-value person isn't about being super selfish and only caring about yourself and becoming better than others.
Okay.
But how does that fit with this whole detachment thing?
I think we need to look closer at what she really means by detachment.
Okay.
It's not about shutting ourselves off or becoming emotionally unavailable.
Right.
It's more about recognizing that our worth comes from inside us, not from what other people think or say.
So it's less about being an island and more about building a strong foundation for ourselves so we can handle whatever life throws at us and connect with others in a real way.
I love that. It's like instead of clinging to a life raft, we learn to swim.
Exactly. And when we're secure in ourselves, we're less likely to need validation from others or do those low-value things Kaur talks about. We can approach relationships from a place of strength.
Yeah.
Not neediness or desperation.
Absolutely. It makes so much sense.
It's about cultivating that inner peace and self-love so we can connect authentically and be vulnerable.
From that place of security,
Yeah.
we can choose relationships that match our values
Right.
and help us grow. We don't have to settle or cling to relationships that aren't working anymore.
This is starting to feel less like a contradiction
Mm-hmm.
and more like all these ideas actually work together. When we invest in ourselves,
Yeah.
we're actually better at creating healthy, fulfilling relationships.
Exactly. It's like the oxygen mask on a plane.
Oh, yeah.
You have to put yours on first before you can help anyone else.
Such a good analogy.
Hmm.
And it speaks to the importance of self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Taking care of ourselves isn't selfish. It's essential for showing up as our best selves in every part of our lives.
I agree. And I think that's one of the most valuable things we can take from Kaur's philosophy, even if we don't agree with everything she says.
Right.
She reminds us that we have the power to create a life we love,
Yes.
a life that feels authentic and fulfilling, both on our own and with others.
So what does all of this mean for you, listener? As you're figuring things out, remember that you get to decide what high value means.
Yeah.
It's not about fitting into someone else's mold or chasing approval from others.
Right.
It's about recognizing your own strengths and knowing you're worthy, and then creating a life that feels right for you.
And remember that self-discovery is a journey. It's ongoing. You'll have moments where you feel super confident and times where you doubt yourself. That's totally normal. The important thing is to keep learning and growing.
Absolutely.
And always strive to be your best self.
Maybe Kaur's ideas give you some direction. Or maybe you'll find your own way. That's okay.
Whatever you do,
Yeah.
remember that you can create a life that's both deeply fulfilling and full of connection.
And don't be afraid to question things, to challenge the rules,
Yeah.
to define success on your own terms.
That's what a truly high-value life is all about.